The paper class conspiracy. How UNC created an 18-year academic fraud.
What if I told you that for 18 years, at one of America's most prestigious public universities, thousands of elite athletes took classes that didn't even exist?
Classes with no professor, no attendance, no instruction. The only requirement was a single paper at the end of the semester.
This isn't even a hypothetical. This is the story of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, a story of a conspiracy of silence that involved over 3,100 students, 200 fake classes, and an 18-year-long academic fraud that the NCAA called the biggest in its history.
This is the story of the paper classes, and it's a story that reveals a dark truth about the real priorities of big-time college sports. Welcome back to the Ignite Test Prep Vanguard podcast. Today, we're talking about something you probably never heard of before, the paper class conspiracy. How UNC created an 18-year academic fraud.
What if I told you that for 18 years, at one of America's most prestigious public universities, thousands of elite athletes took classes that didn't even exist?
Classes with no professor, no attendance, no instruction. The only requirement was a single paper at the end of the semester, a paper that in some cases was plagiarized or written by a tutor or was just a few paragraphs long.
This isn't even a hypothetical. This is the story of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, a story of a conspiracy of silence that involved over 3,100 students, 200 fake classes, and an 18-year-long academic fraud that the NCAA called the biggest in its history.
This is the story of the paper classes, and it's a story that reveals a dark truth about the real priorities of big-time college sports.
Welcome to Ignite Investigates. Today, we're diving into a scandal so deep that and so persuasive, and it calls into question the very meaning of a student athlete. This is the story of the University of North Carolina academic athletic scandal.
It all starts with a woman named Mary Willingham. She was an academic tutor at UNC, started in 2003 to help student athletes with their coursework. But what she found shocked her.
She started noticing a pattern. Athletes, particularly in the revenue sports of football and basketball, were being funneled into a specific department, and this department was the African and Afro-American Studies, or also known as the AFAM.
And within that department, they were being enrolled to a specific type of class, independent studies. These were supposed to be rigorous one-on-one courses with a professor, but they weren't.
William started digging. She found that these classes had no instruction, no curriculum either, and often, sometimes no professor. The only requirement was just a final paper, and she called them paper classes.
In a 2014 interview with CNN, Willingham dropped an absolute bombshell. She claimed that based on her analysis of 183 football and basketball players from 2004 to 2012, 60% were reading at a 4th to 8th grade level. We're talking about college basketball players reading at a 4th to 8th grade level, and 10% of them were reading below a 3rd grade level.
Wow. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. These are students at a top-tier public university, and according to Willingham, many of them were functionally illiterate. They couldn't even read, they couldn't talk, they could only talk, but they didn't even know what they were saying. That's crazy. And the university, instead of educating them, was allegedly hiding them in fake classes to keep them eligible to play. Think about that.
That's insane. One of the most infamous examples was a 146-word essay on Rosa Parks. Willingham claimed a student athlete received an A- for this paper in an AFAM class. The paper was riddled with grammatical errors, and simplistic language. It was, to be blunt, a middle school level paper.
The university, of course, pushed back hard. They attacked Willingham's method. The university, of course, pushed back hard. They attacked Willingham's methodology, her credentials, and even her own master's thesis. They tried to paint her as a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind.
But it was too late. The story was out, and it wasn't just Willingham. A Raleigh News and Observer reporter named Dan Kane had been pulling on this thread since 2010, when a football scandal first exposed all the academic improprieties.
Kane's reporting was relentless. He found evidence of forged faculty signatures on grade reports. He found athletes taking 400 level AFAM classes in the summer before their freshman year. He found the transcript of former UNC football and basketball star Julius Peppers, which showed a 1.82 GPA and a suspicious number of high grades in AFAM classes that kept him illegible.
Pressure mounted. The university was forced to launch its own investigations, and what they found was even worse than anyone imagined.
In 2014, UNC commissioned an independent investigation led by former federal prosecutor Kenneth Weinstein. The Weinstein report was a 136-page document that laid bare the entire conspiracy.
Here are the key findings. The fraud ran for over 18 years, from 1993 to 2011. Over 3,100 students were involved, about half of them being athletes. The scheme overall was centered in the AFAM department and was run by two people, Department Chairman Julius Niangaro and Department Administrator Deborah Crowder.
Crowder was the architect. She created the paper classes. She enrolled the students. She graded the papers. And she handed out A's and B's like it was candy. Regardless of the quality of the work, she didn't care. She did this, according to the report, out of a misguided sympathy for struggling students and particularly athletes. But this was just a lie.
Exactly. Niangaro, the department chair, knew about the scheme, but he allowed it to continue. He even got paid $12,000 to teach a class that never met. He was later charged with felony fraud, though the charges were dropped in exchange for his cooperation.
The Weinstein report was devastating. It confirmed everything Willingham and Kane had been saying, and even more. It described a shadow curriculum that existed outside the normal academic structure, a system designed to keep athletes eligible at all costs.
And the academic counselors, the very people who were supposed to be guiding these students, were complicit. The report found that they leveraged the paper classes to keep the at-risk student athletes eligible. They knew the classes were a sham, but they used them anyways.
The reports includes damning quotes from the counselors themselves. One said the paper classes were a way to keep a kid eligible when they were in a tough spot. Another called them a lifeline.
And it wasn't just a few rogue employees. This was a systemic failure. It was a conspiracy of silence that implicated the athletic department, the academic support program, and the university administration.
The university was placed on probation by its accrediting agency, a rare and humiliating sanction for a major research university. The NCAA launched its own investigation, which dragged on for years.
But here's the craziest part. In 2017, the NCAA announced its conclusion. No NCAA rule violations. Why? Because the fake classes were technically available to all students, not just the athletes. And the NCAA doesn't have oversight over a university's academic curriculum.
It was a stunning abdication of responsibility. Stunning. The NCAA essentially said, yes, this was a massive academic fraud, but it's not our problem. That's crazy. You can't do that. It was a perfect encapsulation of the absurdity of the student athlete model. It was crazy.
So, who are the real victims here? It's easy to point fingers at the university, the coaches, the counselors, but the students who were funneled into these fake classes were also victims.
These were often young men from disadvantaged backgrounds, recruited for their athletic talent, not their academic prowess. They were promised an education, but what they got was a sham. They were kept eligible, but they weren't being educated at all. It's crazy.
Shad McCants, a star of the UNC 2005 national championship basketball team, told ESPN in 2014 that he took paper classes, that tutors wrote his papers, and that he rarely went to class for 4 semesters. He said, I thought it was just all part of the college experience, just like watching it on a movie from He Got Game or Blue Chips.
He was functionally illiterate when he got to UNC, and he was still functionally illiterate when he left. Think about that. He got his championship ring, but he didn't get his education. And that's the real tragedy.
This scandal exposes the fundamental hypocrisy of big time college sports. They're a multi billion-dollar entertainment business that's built on the unpaid labor of young athletes, all under the guise of amateurism and education.
And when the conflict between when the conflict between athletics and academics becomes too great, the academics are the first thing to go. The UNC scandal is the most extreme example, but it's not an isolated incident. It's a symptom of a broken system.
So, what's a lesson for parents and students today? It's that you can't trust an institution to have your best interests at heart. You can't assume that a prestigious name brand guarantees a quality education, especially for athletes. Athletes are essentially the people that are running the circus. Like they're bringing in all the money for the university. No payment, just performing every night. No education either. It's ridiculous.
For real. You got to be your own advocate. You have to demand real education and not just being eligible. You don't want that. You have to build the actual skills, the critical thinking, the writing, the intellectual curiosity that will serve you long after your athletic career is even over.
Exactly. See, everyone's heard of those stories where a football player gets a massive $50 million check and he's broke 5 years later. Everyone's heard those stories with a basketball player that got a massive deal and they're broke 5 years later. Even nowadays, the famous boxer Adrian Broner was posting on his Instagram story that he can't even afford to feed his 5 kids or he has 10 kids because there's no financial literacy being taught to athletes. No athlete understands how to manage their money. And what this is showing us is that these athletes are recruited into these schools. They're not even being given an education. And then they're sent off to the big leagues, to the NBA, where they can only read at a third to sixth grade reading level. What do you think happens when someone offers them a contract that's too good to be true and they can't even understand the fine lines? That's how they get scammed. That's how all the biggest artists, all the biggest athletes get scammed. And see, at Ignite, this is what we focus on. We don't just teach you how to beat the test, we teach you how to actually think. We teach you how to actually write, how to learn. We build the foundation of academic excellence that'll make you immune to the temptations of the easy way out.
Yeah. Because in the end, the only person you could truly rely on is always going to be yourself. So this is why you need to build up the skills, the education. You have to keep that academic curiosity going so that you're always learning more. The UNC scandal is a harsh reminder of that. Don't let a university's pursuit of athletic glory compromise your future. Do not let it happen.
And so, to conclude, if you actually want to build a truly unshakable academic foundation, if you want your child to really be armed with the skill sets to move forward in this world effectively, to not make any mistakes, to make their money and save it, to understand contracts, to understand high level rhetoric, high level English and math skills so that they can be protected, then what you're going to want is you're going to want to download our free black book over at ignitetestprep.com/blackbook. That's going to give you all the intelligence you need to navigate a system that is not on your side.
Thanks for listening to Ignite investigates. Join us next time as we uncover another hidden truth in the world of elite education. We'll see you guys next time.
That's